Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I have some updates and announcements to share, and then as usual, we'll be taking your questions. The first update is about the Lost Wages Assistance Program. This is the FEMA program that provides an extra $300 per week for the time period of July 26th through September 5th of this year. This was the 8th new benefit program that we've implemented in as many months, and the initial launch of that program went well, but we do have some fixes that we need to do. Each time we alter the code of our programs, there are some unintended consequences that we need to find and fix. Last week, we shared that we identified some issues that led to some eligible claimants not receiving all of the lost wages assistance benefits, while some people who had not yet completed the self-certification inadvertently received payments. We have been intermittently issuing payments as we resolve these remaining issues. We're proactively reaching out to confirm the eligibility of everyone who has not certified, and we'll be working with anyone who was overpaid lost wages assistance benefits to recover those funds. We are encouraging anyone who hasn't yet certified for those benefits to do so right away, even if they're not sure whether or not they'll be eligible. You do have to be impacted by COVID-19 to be able to receive the lost wages assistance benefits under the FEMA requirements, but that is a much easier standard to meet than many people assume. For example, if you're out of work, underemployed, or having a hard time finding a new job because of the pandemic, you would meet that requirement. So we really are encouraging people to self-certify. People can do that through our online claim system by scrolling down to the lost wages assistance. And those with language access needs can contact us by email at oed_languageaccess@oregon.gov or by calling our language hotline, which is 503-606-6969. We're now handling most parts of the benefit processes as quickly or even quicker than we ever have before. Most of the roadblocks for us getting people benefits as quickly as possible have been removed. Unfortunately, not all of them have, though, and the adjudication process remains our biggest challenge. We've been trying everything that we can to speed up getting people their benefits, and that includes several novel approaches to adjudication. One of those we announced at the end of July, which is the Benefits While You Wait program. With that approach, we were reviewing people whose claims required adjudication and finding those people who we knew were eligible for benefits under one of the benefit programs we're administering, but the adjudication process had to be completed for us to determine which program. And we were going ahead and paying them benefits while we made that determination as to which program they would ultimately receive benefits under. This has been successful, and it allowed us to pay about $75 million in benefits to over 18,000 people whose claims need adjudication. We've been having ongoing discussions with the U.S. Department of Labor about this approach, and unfortunately yesterday they did inform us that federal requirements prohibit us from using benefits while you wait as widely as we have been. We can continue to do it for some circumstances, but not for as many situations as we had been previously. We continue to believe that our original approach is permitted under federal law, and that approach is something that let us help more Oregonians more quickly. Unfortunately, this decision is one that the federal government gets to make, and they have required us to limit the scope of how we use benefits while you wait. We are continuing to look for any way that we can to speed up the adjudication process and to get people their benefits absolutely as quickly as possible. Among the other work that we've been doing on adjudication is trying to get more information that we can share to show the progress and the state of the adjudication process. Previously, I shared that as of September 23rd, there were about 49,000 people whose claims needed to be adjudicated. Some of those people are getting benefits even while waiting for adjudication. So that would include, for instance, those 18,000 people that we have helped through the Benefits While You Wait program. And some of the other people, while their claims do need adjudication, it may only be impacting 1 week or a couple of weeks, and they may be continuing to receive benefits for all the other weeks at issue. We've been working hard to find a way to readily track the number of people needing adjudication and the progress that we're making in working through those claims. This is a little challenging because each day new people file claims and each day new issues are identified that require adjudication. And also each day we're resolving issues that needed adjudication. We do now have a way to report on the number of people whose claims need adjudication, though. So as of the end of September, on September 30th, the total number of people at that time whose claims needed adjudication was just under 52,000. As of October 11th, we had reduced that down to 48,000. We're going to continue to report on our progress of working through all of those claims, and we'll be tracking all the people whose claims needed adjudication as of September 30th and our progress in working through those as quickly as we can. And we are laser focused on resolving those claims and doing so at an increasing rate. We continue to innovate how we handle the adjudication process. We have hundreds of new adjudicators who are quickly gaining proficiency and getting through work more quickly. And we're continuing our work with a vendor to help speed the adjudication process up. This remains a huge focus for us, and we are doing everything that we can to speed the adjudication process up. Some of the other updates to share include about the waiting week, and we remain on track to meet our preliminary estimate of being able to start paying people for the waiting week by the end of November. Again, that is subject to change if there are new federal or other state programs that we have to implement, or if we run into unanticipated complications. Our unemployment website, unemployment.oregon.gov, is now available in 15 languages other than English. Our previous COVID-19 website was also available in 16 languages, but this newer site provides timely information and updates and is easier to navigate and is more mobile friendly than our prior ones. Making this newer website available in 16 languages is just part of our ongoing work and commitment towards increasing language access and removing barriers for people to be able to access important information about our programs. We're also working to make the online PUA form available in all 16 languages. It will soon be available in Arabic and simplified Chinese, in addition to English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Russian, and Korean. With our modernization work, we are very close to releasing an addendum that will set out the next steps we're taking in choosing the best solution and the best vendor for Oregonians. Today, we announced that September's unemployment rate in Oregon, which decreased to 8%, from the revised figure for August of 8.5%. For the past few months, our state unemployment rate has closely tracked to the national unemployment rate, which fell from 8.4% in August to 7.9% in September. Over the past 3 months, the rate of job growth in Oregon has slowed after having more rapid growth in May and June. Despite the recent slowdown, there were still jobs added in each of the last 5 months. So far, the state has recovered about 45% of the jobs that were lost in March and April of this year when the pandemic recession really hit. Yesterday was the first of 5 virtual town halls that the agency has held for the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. These town halls are listening sessions as we work on building this important new program, where participants are invited to ask questions, offer ideas, or raise concerns about the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program's development and administrative rules. There's a recording of yesterday's town hall on the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance website that's available at oregon.gov/employ/PFMLI. And you can also find there the schedule and registration information for the upcoming town halls, the next one of which is going to be on October 27th. And our next webinar about unemployment matters will be held next Thursday, October 22nd at 1 p.m. The topic will be the adjudication process, and we hope to explain to claimants what adjudication is and some of the many reasons why a claim may need to be adjudicated. You can visit our social media pages to register for that webinar. And to share some information about the number of claims and benefits that have been paid, between March 15th and October 10th, we have paid $5.2 billion in benefits. That means that over the past 7 months of the pandemic, we have paid out as much in benefits as we did in the prior 9 years. We're continuing to do the initial processing in many stages of claim handling very quickly. Between March 15th and October 10th, there have been 585,500 claims for regular unemployment insurance benefits. That doesn't include the PUA program. Compared to the prior year for that same time period, where we had just 80,700 claims. And as I've been reporting for several weeks now, we continue to be processing those claims initially very quickly, with most of them being processed through in just a matter of business days, and even the oldest, most complicated ones completing that part of the process within a couple of weeks. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program also continues to pay out more benefits. We have paid benefits to more than 66,000 people and have paid more than $250 million of PUA benefits to those people. Our work-share program continues to be an important support for Oregon businesses and workers. Since March 15th, we've had about 1,600 employers using the program, and we have just under 66,000 workers covered by those work-share programs. And we're doing a good job of staying current on processing new work-share plans, as well as the initial and ongoing claims for benefits from people participating in work-share. Even as the data shows that unemployment rates are dropping, and as we look ahead to reemployment, the future of work and the building of new programs, we're still prioritizing getting much needed unemployment benefits to everyone who is waiting. Especially with the federal government requiring us to scale back benefits while you wait for those whose claims require adjudication, getting people the benefits they qualify for is our agency's top priority, and we continue to be absolutely focused on doing that. We will continue pushing full steam ahead, making improvements where we can until each person has received all of their benefits. Thank you, and at this time I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. I'm about to open the lines for questions. Remember, I will call on you in the order you RSVP'd. And if you're joining us by phone, make sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself. First up, we have Lindsay Nasrich with COIN.
Hey, David, I'm not sure if I missed it in the beginning, but did you say how many people will be impacted by having to scale back the benefits while you wait program?
It's hard to say on an ongoing basis how many will be impacted. When we look at the people that we've been able to help so far, which was about 18,000 people who we have paid benefits using benefits while you wait, about a third of those are in the type of claims where we're no longer allowed to do that. So it looks like on an ongoing basis, it will probably scale it back by about a third, but we'll continue to do everything we can to pay the benefits while you wait for those cases where the U.S. Department of Labor is allowing us to do so.
And at what point, the unemployment rate is dropping, which is good, but at what point does that impact the extended benefits that are available?
There's a formula where it's kind of a rolling look of what the unemployment rate is now to what it was over prior time periods. So there's not a static number where when it drops below a certain threshold, the high extended benefits or extended benefits stops. We'll be notified with a formal notice from the U.S. Department of Labor when we hit that threshold. We don't anticipate being off of the regular extended benefits, at least in the immediate future. And that's something that we're continuing to monitor with projections, but because it's a rolling comparison, you really have to just keep monitoring it until you hit that threshold. There's no way to know exactly when that will happen.
And if I could, lastly, real quick, over the summer, the AG's office sent out a note that scammers were, impersonating OED, saying that they needed personal info for unemployment claims. We're hearing that's still happening. Is that impacting you guys at all? And what should people know? Are you still hearing of this happening? Scammers trying to take advantage of people who are still waiting for benefits?
Sure. Unfortunately, whenever there's a disaster, and certainly this pandemic and the shutdown of the economy and the impact on people is a big disaster, some people try to take advantage of that. So I've talked a little bit about some of the schemes that we are fighting, working with law enforcement and with other partners to combat, where people are impersonating claimants to try to get benefits that they're not entitled to basically steal people's identity. What you're talking about is a different twist on that, and unfortunately, we are still hearing about that going on. We really encourage people to be careful about sharing their confidential information. We're still seeing some people that are, for example, putting social security numbers in emails. Really encourage people to be careful about doing that. just use precaution as they would with anyone when giving out confidential information. I'm hesitating because it's hard for us to tell the public, here's what we're going to ask and how you will know it's us, because unfortunately the people that are trying to defraud them will also hear that and can then emulate it. So we are constantly looking at what we can do to preserve people's confidentiality and to make sure that they know it's us calling. We have had some challenges with people being appropriately cautious before they share information with us, but we're typically able to work through that by sharing with them information that we already have about their claim so that they know that it's us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Next, we have Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, following up on that comment, has Oregon seen the kind of fraud rate that apparently has been going on in Washington State? I know you've talked in previous calls about Oregon and your national association being able to combat that, at least with regard to Oregon. I'm not asking you to obviously evaluate other states, but given the scope of the vast amount of aid that's being generated and delivered by your agency, I'm just trying to find out whether the scope of attacks on a fraud-directed attacks is wide or narrow or whatever.
So the scope of attacks is pretty broad. We have not seen the scale that some other states saw. And part of that is because we communicate with the other states, and Washington has been a great partner of, as soon as they discover any of those attempts to commit fraud, they're sharing that information with us and with other partner states, and we're working closely with our partners. So as soon as any state really identifies a fraud attack, we're looking at the information that they have and instituting controls and constantly looking through our records and our processes to prevent that. So it is a serious issue. The attempts are quite wide, quite broad, and ongoing. And the attempts, unfortunately, continue to evolve. So we're continuing to evolve how we combat them. In terms of dollar amounts that have been identified, we have not seen as many fraudulent payments identified as a number of other states. And part of that is when we have been able to identify the identity theft or some of these other criminal schemes, we've frequently been able to do that early in the process, either before payments have been made or when only very few payments have been made on the claim. So that's certainly been helpful.
Okay, I have a follow-up on a different, and probably it's more of a technical question about, we've often heard about both your agency and then the federal government's adjusting the unemployment rate the month after the monthly rate is disclosed. How often does that occur? And is it usually significant, a significant change or whatever?
So it's pretty common to see some adjustment up or down from the preliminary number as more solid data and analysis takes place later. So the fact that there's adjustments, that does happen very frequently at the national level and for all states. We have seen, for instance, the adjustment from the preliminary to final unemployment rate figures for the month of August was larger than we typically see. And some of that is just that we're in very volatile times. So making any kind of projection or preliminary numbers is just a lot more difficult right now because we aren't seeing typical trends be consistent and carry out as they have in the past.
Okay, thanks.
Next is Kate Davidson with OPB. Do we have Kate Davidson on the line? Okay, we can come
Yep,
back.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks,
Can you hear
Kate.
me? Hi, sorry. I was trying that again. Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to ask a little bit more about benefits while you wait. What exactly did the federal government take issue with in Oregon's use of the program? Like, how is it going to change? Who's not going to be able to do it now that could do it before?
So the area where we had been doing it that the U.S. Department of Labor said we cannot is for people who are not in what's called continued claim status. So it's essentially people, the group that we were looking at were people who had filed a claim. There was an issue that required adjudication. And at the conclusion of that adjudication, we knew that either they were going to be found to be eligible for the regular benefits they had applied for, or we had determined that they had been impacted by COVID-19. So we would go ahead and be paying them under the PUA program, even if the adjudication process found them ineligible for regular benefits. If those people had not yet received a week of benefits or waiting week credit for that claim, then under the federal requirements that we were given, we are not allowed to do the benefits while you wait.
Okay, so it would be for more newly processed applications.
Right, or for people where the adjudication was one that impacted the very start of the claim, because each week when someone is seeking benefits, it has the potential to raise an issue that requires adjudication. If somebody was already receiving benefits or had received waiting week credit, and a few weeks later an issue is discovered that requires adjudication, in that case, they're in continued claim status and we are allowed to continue. But if it's something that from the beginning is known to require adjudication, so they haven't yet been paid or received the waiting week credit, that's the category of people that unfortunately we're not allowed to use that approach for anymore.
Okay, and just one tiny thing, the people who are paid under UI and not the PUA level of benefit.
That's
correct?
Right? That's correct.
Okay,
We're paying them
you.
their regular benefits. And then if they ultimately are found not eligible for that, we'll essentially switch them over to the PUA program.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kate. Next is Bill Porler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hey, so about the people who are in adjudication, I talked to a woman named Jamie Boast who evidently her claim has been in adjudication for a few months and she didn't find out about it till last week. How long is it typical for people to find out that the status that they're in adjudication and what they have to do about it?
So one of the challenges that we face, and we know that this is difficult for people waiting for their benefits, and it's difficult for us too, is our system flags claims that have issues that might need adjudication. And we don't know until we have an employee that's able to look at it and do some review whether it will actually require full adjudication, or if it's something that we have other information that we can look at that resolves the issue or that might allow us to clear up more quickly. When we're not in a pandemic, that lag time is very short. So it's really not noticeable to people, especially with it being a weekly payment program. Unfortunately, right now, where we've had hundreds of thousands of people file for benefits in just record short amount of time, there are so many people with claims pending that we're not able to get to that right away. So there is a wait, and the amount of the wait really varies depending on how quickly we're able to review it. We've done several kind of layers of review. So we have some people that don't have as much experience, but who are able to go through those claims and at least determine that for some of the issues, they're able to resolve more quickly. But that still leaves them either needing review by someone with more experience or ultimately the full adjudication process. And we're kind of constantly shifting how we're approaching that to get through them as quickly as possible. But it can still be weeks or months, unfortunately, before people know for certain that their claim will need adjudication.
Okay. So you've mentioned in the past about there being like I don't know if it was if you referred to it as a special division or something in the employment department where you guys found out people in dire straits, essentially. What can you tell me about whatever that is and how that works?
So it's not a special division. We have a number of people that are doing all types of work, and it's still a matter of just a really massive historic amount of work at every stage of the process that has to be done. For some parts of the process, we're going, I mentioned, for instance, the initial processing of regular claims, which had been taking months earlier in the pandemic. Now that's just taking days. So there's really no need to prioritize, and that's not slowing down benefits getting to anyone. There are various ways that we learn that someone may be in a particularly dire situation. Whenever we do receive that, we're prioritizing the work. And we have been, since the onset of the pandemic, been trying to come up with the best ways to prioritize the work. And I think one of the challenges for us and for the public early on was with everything being so overwhelmed, there wasn't a system that we could use to effectively do that. We've been able to improve that significantly. So for instance, when the fires happened, we proactively were identifying people that we knew were impacted by the wildfires based on their address that they had with us. And we created mechanisms for people to report to us if they were impacted by the wildfires. The other ways that we're prioritizing are based on who has been waiting the longest, or if we, through any mechanism, learn that someone is in a particularly dire situation, we are giving priority to those claims. And that could be when they're talking to us on the phone, we learn information that makes that clear by reviewing information they've submitted, or any number of ways. We just prioritize those and try to move those to get handled as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Bill. Next, we have Mikerogaway with the Oregonian.
Hey, David. It looks like, if I understood correctly, you processed about 4,000 adjudication claims between September 30th and October 11th. Is that pace representative, and is that what we can expect going forward, or do you think it's likely to accelerate, and if so, by how much?
So we want it to accelerate. It is likely to accelerate. The exact pace of the acceleration is hard to predict because we are doing so many things that haven't been done before. We have hundreds of new people who are coming out of training or have been trained and are just gaining proficiency. We know what that learning curve looks like when we're doing training the way we have in the past, when the training itself takes 3 or 4 months and we have smaller groups and a really strong network of experienced adjudicators to provide mentoring and support to each new employee. We don't know what that looks like now when the number of new adjudicators vastly outnumbers the experienced adjudicators that we have. So that's certainly a challenge, but we're making those process innovations and using the contractor to help change our processes and speed things up. So we're looking at that on pretty much a daily basis to see what adjustments we can make to increase the pace. And I'm hoping that we will pretty quickly, over the next several report outs that we have where we're sharing our progress, be able to see the pace of that increase, because we certainly talked about prioritizing the claims. We are doing that, but to be clear, our goal is to get all of those claims handled as quickly as we can. And we just have to increase the pace of our work and continue working through those claims as quickly as we can.
Do you know, I mean, do some of those go back to, are they time limited? I mean, have you worked through all the adjudication claims from, say, June or something like that?
They're not time limited for a couple of reasons. One of them is that one of the ways that we try to triage the work is, and this gets a little bit technical, but for instance, if you were to file a claim with us, we would do the initial processing and we might immediately identify something that requires adjudication. Sometimes people don't file for a week of benefits right away. And if they haven't actually claimed a week of benefits, we're not working on those issues because we know there are people that have filed for a week of benefits that we need to adjudicate, and we're doing those first. And some of the prioritization work that we're doing also kind of shifts that timing. So for instance, someone who may have an adjudication issue that they've been waiting on for several months, if they're receiving benefits under benefits while you wait, we are not prioritizing their claim, even though they've been waiting for adjudication for a long time, because they're not waiting for their payments. So I don't have a concrete date. The most that we have right now is really that recent date, which was the end of September, where we had that entire universe of claims that we're working on. Within that, we are trying to focus on the oldest ones first and those other priority categories that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Next is Dick Hughes with the Hughesisms.
Thank you again, David, for doing these. Do you have any sense or any way of determining how many people have given up or can't get through? You know, we hear these stories, as we've talked about before, people who get letters saying they've been rejected or whatever, and they just get frustrated. And, you know, some of them I know use your contact us form, but is there any way of, excuse me, any way of knowing how many people have sort of given up on applying?
You know, we can't really quantify people who don't apply. In terms of people who have applied and have been discouraged, you know, unfortunately, not everyone is eligible to get benefits under the programs that we administer, even with all the many programs that we have right now. We have heard anecdotally of people that have become discouraged. If there were issues that hadn't yet been resolved and we're working through the claim, we're still doing that affirmative outreach to people. And we've certainly been messaging as much as we can. We don't want people to be discouraged. We understand the frustration, but these are benefits that they're eligible for if they meet the requirements. And our goal is to get those benefits to people. So we have been encouraging people to let us know, to not give up, and to understand that we are, it pains us, it pains me, I know, when I hear those stories, and we really want to encourage those people to keep filing the weekly claims, and we will resolve those issues as quickly as we're able. We want people to get the benefits that they're eligible for. That's why we're here, that's why we come to work, and why we're working through this incredible mountain of work.
Thank you. On a related note, do you have any way of tracking how long it's been since people have been communicated with? You mentioned that it could be weeks or months for someone to learn whether they're in adjudication and the status. Is there any way that the system is set up when people are in limbo for someone to be alerted to make sure that so-and-so is notified that they're still in limbo or whatever, if that question makes sense?
I think I understand what you're asking, and unfortunately our system doesn't do that. If people are continuing to file their weeks of benefits, they will get a notice each week. So they'll either get a payment or a notice telling them that they're not getting a payment because there's an issue with their claim. Unfortunately, the notice that many people are getting is not specific enough to tell them that their claim does need adjudication or where exactly in the process it is. And that's one of the things that we've been challenged by since the start of this, that when our system was originally built decades ago and as it's evolved over the decades with new layers added on, it just wasn't, you know, for instance, sending emails, people weren't using email when our systems were first built. So we've added on ways to do that, but it's an extra layer on top, and it can't provide the level of detail to give people as much information as we know they would want to have about the status of their claim. And there's no real way for us to, in an automated way, track how long it's been since someone receives some communication from us. So that would require looking at each individual claim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Next, we have Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing Blog.
Hi, I have a question about unemployment insurance taxes. My understanding is in September, the department's required to calculate a fund adequacy percentage ratio that's used to determine the schedule for the tax rates in the coming year. What was the fund adequacy percentage ratio that you calculated in September?
So I do not have the adequacy ratio in front of me. We're required to do that computation and look at the balance in the trust fund, and then we announce by November 15th, I believe is the date, when we announce both what tax schedule we're going to be in and what each individual employer's tax rate is going to be. Oregon has a very elegant statutory formula that it makes it hard to give an exact number ahead of time of what each employer's rate will be, but it works very well to protect the trust fund. We're one of the few states that looks like we may get through this historic recession without having to borrow money to pay regular benefits, and that's going to save employers taxes because they won't have to pay interest and borrowing costs and lose federal tax credits as a result of borrowing. But at this point, I don't have the adequacy ratio. We will be pushing more information out publicly as we get closer to announcing which tax schedule we'll be in. And then it probably won't be until right around November 15th that we have each of Oregon's employers' individual tax rates computed and we notify them.
I'm going to follow up on that in a slightly different direction. And I was hoping to kind of hear an actual number today, but I understand what you're saying. So I want to switch topics a little bit. I haven't heard anything in the last couple of weeks about the status of claimants for disaster unemployment assistance. Have you received many initial claims, or do you have many continuing claims for disaster unemployment assistance related to the wildfires?
So we do have some people that have applied for disaster unemployment as a result of the wildfires and have received both the initial unemployment benefits from the initial claim and that are filing on an ongoing basis. It's not what we would normally see if we had had the same type of disaster and it weren't also during a pandemic. So we've seen a lot of people that have filed for and received benefits under one of the many other programs. And you only get that disaster unemployment if you can't get regular unemployment or one of the extensions or PUA. So the number of people, I do not have the exact number in front of me who have received disaster unemployment as a result of the wildfires is pretty low. It understates the number of people who were impacted by the fires and who were receiving benefits under one of the other programs.
David, just to clarify, you're saying under one of the other unemployment insurance programs, not one of the other disaster programs generally.
Correct. I was talking about, for instance, the regular state UI program or pandemic unemployment assistance or PEUC, one of the other programs that we're administering.